tree carving. The nearby Croatoan Island, now known as Hatteras Island, is the location to which many believe the colonists moved. So at the time of the colony's founding, the Hatteras Indians occupied the island, and a popular theory supposes that the colonists joined the group of Native Americans to overcome their lack of resources and knowledge of the land. A supposed piece of evidence for this claim is the existence of carvings in the stones that were made by Eleanor Dare, the daughter of John White. These stones, often called the Dare Stones, contain written stories that tell the fates of the colonists and personal anecdotes from Dare to her father. Though they are largely believed to be a hoax, natives were instructed to carve a Maltese cross in a tree if they were compelled to leave against their will. There was no Maltese cross found at the site. White assumed with all these clues that the colonists had moved to a nearby island, but bad weather prevented he and his men from going to look for them. His men would go with him to look for the missing colonists, and they left the next day. So since the colonists disappeared in 1590, there have been investigations into what happened. In 1602, Sir Walter Raleigh decided to find out what happened himself. He hired his own ship and paid his sailors wages so that they would focus on the mission. They reached Virginia, but a severe storm forced them to go back to England before they were able to reach the island. When he arrived back in England, Raleigh was arrested for treason before he could organize any more missions back. In 1603, another fact-finding mission to Roanoke, led by Gilbert, ended in disaster. A storm blew the expedition off course, and the team that went ashore was attacked and killed by Native Americans. The remaining crew returned to England without having found any information on the colonists of Roanoke. It seemed as if there would never be a definitive answer to the mysteries of the disappearances. Over the years, centuries, so this is one of the more puzzling parts of it. So right before Edgar Allan Poe died, he disappeared for a short time. So when he was seen again, he was delirious, and his final state of delirium before his death, allegedly one of his last words he said was "Croatonin." Poe's official cause of death is unknown, and his medical records and death certificate are lost. So we'll never know what happened to him the night that he died. This word also appeared at several other famous disappearances in the 19th and 20th centuries. In 1888, the stagecoach robber Blackbart carved the word into the wall of his cell before he was released from prison. He was never seen or heard from again. It was found in Amelia Earhart's journal after she disappeared in 1837 as well. The last bed that horror writer Ambrose Bierce slept in before he disappeared in Mexico in 1813 had the word Croatoan carved into one of the posts. In 1821, it was written on the last page of the logbook of the ship Carroll A. Deering when it crashed on Cape Hatteras near Croatoan Island. The ship was missing its entire crew. So the next theory is that the colonists were murdered. So in 1607, Captain John Smith tried to uncover what happened. He claimed that, the chief had told him that he had killed the people of the colony to retaliate against them for living with another tribe that refused to ally with him. Allegedly, the chief showed Smith the items he took from Roanoke to support his story, including a musket barrel and a brass mortar and pestle. By 1609, the story reached England, and King James and the Royal Council blamed, the chief for the missing colonists. William Strachey seemed to back up the story, confirming the slaughter with his investigation in his work, The Historic of Travail into Virginia Britannia. The chief claimed that he ordered the killings because there was prophecy that he would be conquered and overthrown by people from that area. Contemporary historians and anthropologists dispute this story, though, because there were never any bodies or evidence found to support the claim, but it has persisted for more than 400 years. Recently, author and researcher Brandon Fulham has re-examined Smith and Strachey's sources and has suggested that the massacre could have been the 15 settlers left behind from the second expedition, still leaving the mystery of Roanoke unsolved. Another possible theory is that the Spanish murdered the settlers. England and Spain were in the middle of a war when the people of Roanoke disappeared. When the Spanish Armada attacked England in 1588, White was in England trying to organize supplies and find a way back to the colony. All of the country's available ships were commanded to fight the Spanish, and the war with Spain delayed. Whites returned to the colony with supplies for another 3 years. At the time the settlers disappeared, there were Spanish troops present in Florida. One of the issues that Spain and England went to war over was the colonization of the Americas. There's a theory that the Spanish troops secretly traveled north and eliminated the English colony. The Spanish were known for being offensive against other European powers who tried to settle in the Americas. They attacked forts located in South Carolina and Florida throughout the 16th century. However, a Spanish attack on Roanoke colony is doubtful. No bodies were ever found, and the Spanish were still looking for Roanoke in 1600, 10 years after its colonists went missing. Also, the settlement's fortifications were dismantled when White returned theory was witchcraft. So there's two theories with this, that, the colonists were victims of witches who lived in the North Carolina woods, or the Croatoan either executed the colonists as witches. So the Croatoans believed in witches and witchcraft. Their definition of witches were people who used magic to commit evil acts in everyday life. So while there is no evidence that, the Croatoan executed witches, or that the Croatoan accused the people of Roanoke of witchcraft, they were known for condemning dangerous outsiders. They easily could have blamed the people of Roanoke for spreading diseases to which the Croatoan had no immunity. The Croatoans and other Native American tribes tell legends of witches who live in North Carolina woods, who use black magic to hurt other people. There's a story that the people of Roanoke became the victims of these witches when they left the island, and that is why they have never heard of them again. And then another theory is just supernatural religious explanations. So there's been, supernatural and religious explanations that incorporate Native American belief systems. There's no scientific basis for these theories, but they are still taken seriously by the Native American populations as explanations on what happened to the missing settlers. They mainly revolve around Native American spirits that help explain away not only the behavior of the colonists before they disappeared, but also why they disappeared without a trace. So there's a wild spirit in the form of a beast called Wendigo. When people resort to eating human flesh, their bodies are taken over by Wendigo. So if the people of Roanoke resorted to, eating humans, then according to this belief, they are still alive, roaming the woods of North Carolina in the form of Wendigos. So the Croatoan belief system includes a spirit on the island that had the power to absorb humans into landscape. If the spirit was offended or angered, it would turn people into trees, animals, stones, or any other part of the island. If the colonists were exploiting resources or abusing the land, it could have angered the spirit. This means that the people of Roanoke didn't disappear at all. They were just absorbed into the land. And the last theory I'm going to talk about today is the Dare Stones. So from 1937 to 1940, a series of stones were discovered that supposedly tell the story of what happened to Roanoke colonists. They are called the Dare Stones because they were mostly apparently written by John Waite's daughter, Eleanor Dare. Most historians consider the stones a hoax, although most historians believe the first stone is authentic in 1937. A tourist found an inscribed stone and brought it to Emory University to be examined for its authenticity. Dr. Haywood Pierce, a professor of American history, didn't claim that the stone was authentic, but it did contradict what was known in the time. So the inscription was consistent with the freezing of time, and the colonists would have had tools to carve such a message. They would have the tools. place of